And we're back.
We're back.
Thanks for hanging with us, everybody. If you were hanging with us,
Rob had to pee.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Dude, got a small bladder. Okay, so we're gonna keep rolling on what's happening. Rent due investigation. Jace Vernon and who was the CFO?
Shane Perkins.
Shane Perkins.
Yep.
Maybe do a little bit more research on that, guys, and I hope that everybody's gonna get their money back.
Yeah,
but
that's kind of the main thing I was thinking.
And the other main thing is that if it sounds too good to be true, that's probably right.
Yep.
The days of free money are over. The zero or the ZERP era, as they say, zero interest rate era. Money isn't free anymore, even though they printed $7 trillion of it.
Mm-hmm.
Money's not free anymore. It's too good to be true. It is true. Purgatory expansion, Jeff. What's the update on that?
So they're done. They had the ribbon cutting. It adds some beds, so we can put more bad guys in prison. It added a medical wing so that it kind of helps with the logistics of taking care of the folks that might have medical emergencies or that are inside the prison or come into the prison with a medical emergency. And we toured it. We actually were able to. Sheriff Brooksby had us out there. What, maybe 3 months ago?
Yeah, probably.
Something like that. And they were getting real close, so we got to tour it. He kind of went through some of the ins and outs of the logistics of getting that taken care of. But all in all, it was a much-needed improvement. And my opinion, of course, probably tax dollars well spent.
Yeah, I think so, too. I think it adds another element of revenue coming into the county because it's not just for criminals that are here. It's criminals from across the state. It allows the county to manage it, and also we got the space for it. So they did an expansion probably 2 decades ago. I think early 2000s, right?
Early 2000s, yeah.
Early 2000s, and that was a significant revenue source for the county. And this expansion is going to allow them to continue to do that. And criminals are going to continue to be criminals. And so, unfortunately, as population grows, people are going to continue to commit crimes, and it was good, smart use of tax dollars, I think, for sure. Next up, Lennar pulls back nationwide. Really interesting story as we look at, everybody knows real estate has slowed down significantly over the last few years. But in late 2025, so this is back basically, I think, early October, Lennar Corporation, the second largest U.S. home builder, announced a strategic pullback in its aggressive home construction and sales pace amid sluggish housing market characterized by high mortgage rates, elevated home prices, and waning buyer confidence. This decision was detailed during the company's Q3 2025 earnings call, September, not October. CEO Stuart Miller described the move as a minor adjustment to the firm's 3-year strategy of prioritizing volume over margins, aiming to relieve pressure on sales and deliveries. If you're in the industry, which a big portion of our counties in the industry, everybody can see homes are sitting on the market longer, that relieve pressure on sales and deliveries, there's this rapid fever pace that happens as builders build, because sitting on inventory that's new construction isn't financially very smart. And even though Lennar and D.R. Horton, they have their own lending companies, which D.R. Horton is facing a lawsuit for not disclosing property taxes and actual payments to their buyers. I think, is that suit settled? Did you hear if that suit was settled?
I don't think so. I think it's kind of in process.
Yeah.
They weren't advertising true cost.
This goes back to that sales pressure on sales and deliveries. Is that fever and that pressure for them to pump out new supply, I think is important, and I think it's actually going to be helpful in the long-term health of the housing market as a whole. However, with a decrease in supply, when you're talking about the second largest home builder in the country pulling back on new construction, that's going to signal that they don't want supply to get too far out of reach as demand. The anticipation is that demand is going to tick up, whether it's through these really brilliant, and sarcasm's needed, real brilliant strategies that President Trump has been positioning over the last couple of weeks. But with supply waning and not new supply being brought into the market, that could signal an increase in home values, because even now with supply as it is, home values are stable. They're not going down. Mm-hmm. They're staying stable. And nationwide, there is still some growth, albeit small. There's still some growth in the value. So when supply decreases and demand stays the same, there's still upward pressure on pricing, which is going to exacerbate the affordability crisis. But in the midst of Lennar pulling back, Pulte Homes, which is the third largest home builder in the country, from what I understand, they just dotted a big land purchase in Desert Color.
Yeah, not announced or public yet.
Well, we
public
just made it.
Public in the sense that they haven't really, made any announcements on their website or anything yet, but it's recorded and done, and they bought it. They bought some land out at Desert Color, so they're and they already are building in Utah. They built some homes in Salt Lake City and Heber, and they're a nationwide builder. So they're from what we can see, a home builder would not buy land unless they were planning to build on it. So.
Yeah, and sometimes that's not always the case, right? Market forces change, and they hold the land. Lennar bought land, and that so far they're not launching anything. But there is typically like a 2 to 3 year drag time between buying raw land, developing the land, putting in the infrastructure, and then going vertical.
Yeah, from the person that I talked to, that's exactly what I said. I said, we're probably not going to see a Pulte home, somebody move into one probably for 2.5 years. And he said, I think it might be a little bit quicker than that, depending on what the market does. But as far as he knew, they were gonna get it platted and start going vertical. Hopefully within 12 to 18 months. I think that's probably pushing it. But
this is going to be an important story we're going to bring back to when we talk about water, the contingency plan, and the Colorado River conversation here in a minute as well. So keep that in mind. Did Bill Gates flip flop on climate change? Did you hear about this, Jeff?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So this comes out of a statement that he made just a couple of weeks ago. So this is probably. I think 2 weeks ago. Bill Gates, notorious for his climate change alarmist attitude, he wrote a memo on October 28th. The memo is The 3 Tough Truths About Climate. And it's a shift in his emphasis from his early alarmist framing of climate change and existential crisis, right? These terms are what have fed the crazed, people that go into museums and throw paint on famous works of art or disrupt World Cup soccer games. All of this fever pitch of disaster. The movie that Leonardo DiCaprio did on Netflix, that's basically the world's going to end, and this one guy feels like he's telling everybody the world's going to end, and nobody listens, and then the world ends. I can't remember the name of that movie, but it's interesting because Bill Gates, I think, in my opinion, could be one of the leading voices in what caused all of that excitement. And now he's calling it a strategic pivot to balance finite resources, prioritizing poverty alleviation and disease prevention in the global south over hyperbolic climate narratives that he pushed. These conflicts center on urgency, resource trade-offs, and risk management. Risk assessment, potentially undermining the motivational force of his past calls to action. It's just really fascinating to me. So he wrote a book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster, and then now he's rejecting the doomsday rhetoric, pulling back from it. And it's interesting to see the reports. The left news media basically is calling him, he's downplaying it and saying they're pissed at him because he's making it sound like Trump as the anti-climate change, him calling it a hoax. Because he's saying this, it's going to feed the extreme right in their opinion on climate change and not take it seriously. And the right's saying, what a hypocrite. Here's Bill Gates changing his tune on it. And, it does undermine the whole argument that has been really pitched in the narrative that has gone on over the last 20 years. What are your thoughts on this, Jeff? And why do you think he would have done this?
Well,
just real briefly.
I find it interesting that, at least from what I can see, I don't see where he said anything specific about what he is, what he's maybe taking a different stance on. For example, he didn't say something like, EVs, electric vehicles, are not they're not a help, or something like that. He basically says that that climate change will not lead to humanity's demise.
Yeah, that's exactly. I think that's a quote. He says it's not going to lead to the end of the world.
Yeah, it's a chance to refocus on the metric that should count even more than emissions and temperature change, improving lives.
Yeah, which is I get it and I understand that perspective, but I also can't help his perspective on AI, his investment in and how Microsoft is a strategic partner with OpenAI, and the need for energy and this larger narrative of energy production being probably the most important thing. And if you flash back to my conversation 3 years ago with Lori Mangum, we were talking about this 3 years ago of, hey, energy is going to be one of the most important conversations over the next 5 years. We're 3 years in. So
yeah, we got receipts.
So if you want to go back and listen to that podcast, it was a very interesting podcast and her perspective on it. And after she's been in the business for 25 plus years, but the point being is, Bill Gates has a conflict here. The climate change narrative made him money through green initiatives and his ability to scale out green type investments and make him money that way. And now, because those green initiatives aren't necessarily making him the money that it once did, my opinion, this is me talking, he's shifting. He's like, nah, well, we kind of do need as much energy as we can, so maybe climate change shouldn't be what the focus is on. We should be talking about, feeding poor kids in Africa, and that's my philanthropy. And he talks vaccines in here. His those are his main things, and he's got a huge investment in biological research, and he had a huge opinion on COVID-19. Given his expertise, I'm not sure why he did, but he's more of an activist when it comes to vaccines and helping the poor people, which I don't blame the guy. You hope that everybody's coming at from a perspective of he really does want to give back, but from my experience with him and his history and the divorce with his wife and all those things, I don't necessarily look at him as like this is a really altruistic guy. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, I think you can, for the most part, you can find the answer to just about any question if you follow the money.
That's right.
And in the current administration, Bill Gates, again, my opinion, probably doesn't stand to make as much money focusing on his climate initiatives as he does making sure that his AI-funded initiatives get the energy they need, because if they don't get the energy they need,
and the vaccines and all the other medical stuff that's going on.
Yeah, follow the money.
Yeah, which is fed by, AI is going to solve all of the medical problems that we have, right? That's a narrative that I've heard a bunch of times, is that this AI is going to unlock all this medical technology and all this ability for us to, extend human life and all these things. And I get that, and I'm hopeful. Truthfully, I don't want to sit back and say I'm not hopeful about this, but if it sounds too good to be true, Jeff, it's
usually
probably.
And if Michael Burry is right,
let's not talk about Biden.
It's a rabbit hole. But the point in bringing that up is there are some folks that don't believe that AI is the future as far as maybe as quickly expanding as quickly as a lot of people think it's going to. Yeah, there's
a big argument for it being a bubble. And I heard this argument at one point. Somebody was talking about how it's only a bubble if it doesn't produce the economic output, right? So it'd be like, well, the manufacturing boom, all the investment and money that went into roads and railroads and construction equipment and just the manufacturing boom of, the 1800s, essentially, when we went from agrarian society to, manufacturing. That caused a ripple effect, right? And there was a ton of money that invested in that, but there was a return on that investment. So as long as it continues to prove valuable, there's likely not necessarily going to be a bubble, or how big that bubble is. But I use AI for a lot of different things. I used it for research on this project, but also it's not that great, and most of the robots are not that impressive, truthfully.
Yeah, and I think
right, at this point. So
the argument,
what's that timeline like?
Well, the argument that where the bubble's coming from, and this is maybe a little bit of a rabbit hole, but it does play into Bill Gates a little bit, is that the return on the investment for AI right now is not there. AI is not making money.
Right. We're giving it money.
We're giving
We're
AI
just
money.
giving it money. It's not making us anybody.
So the argument is it feeding the bubble, or is it going to eventually create the return?
Yeah, and that's, you're gonna have to. You could play both sides of it, but
Stay tuned.
It's gonna be a stay tuned. There's too many moving parts. Okay. Last thing on this was rapid fire. This is a very rapid fire, but hey, we're all learning together. Okay. Local city council vacancies. All right. So everybody in Southern Utah, listen up. 4 city council vacancies, city council member vacancies are up for grabs in Washington County. Hurricane City Council, Ivan City Council, Santa Clara City Council, and St. George City Council. Okay. All 4 of those cities had city council members that are now going to be the mayors. This is what I want you to do. If you ever considered serving at that level, if you ever thought to yourself, hey, I feel like I can make a meaningful impact in that, but you don't want to campaign, you don't want to raise money, you don't want to put signs out, you don't want to be held under public scrutiny like a lot of these, basically every single person running for campaigns do, this is your opportunity. And it's very simple. You write a letter, you give a resume, you apply to the city. The city council will do a public interview. So it'll be an interview with the city council and then open to the public for them to interview all of the candidates that submit their applications. And then they're going to vote on the applicants. And if the majority wins, so you got to get 3 out of the 4. I guess it'd be, is it 3 out of 4? Yeah, 3 out of 4, because you have the current sitting, those who got elected into the seats that they were running for. There'll be, no, it would only be three people voting, right? Everybody, I'm thinking about this out loud now.
Yeah, because the ones that were elected aren't going to vote, right? No, they will. So the current city council will vote.
Well, current city council, but all of those city council members are now the mayor, and so the vacancy is there. So there's only.
And then the mayor has a tiebreaker.
And the mayor has a tiebreaker.
Something like that, yeah.
All right. Oh, yeah, that's right. There's 5 city council members. Yeah, so you'll have 4 city council members that'll be voting for you. Mm-hmm. So you just got to get 3 of the 4 to vote for you. But this is a great opportunity. So if you live in the city, you don't have a felony, and you have a pulse and a heart to serve the community, it's a resume and a letter. They should be announcing, the city should be announcing, they have to fill the vacancy within 30 days of the seat going vacant. So seat goes vacant, I believe January 1st. Within 30 days, they have to fill the seats. So watch for the announcements, because they'll probably open it up for applications before January 1st. But watch out for those announcements. We'll probably keep you posted as well. But just go to the city websites and stay posted. I do want to encourage as many people as possible to apply for the job, because this is a great opportunity to go get on the city council without having to run a campaign. And if you want to rerun in 2 years, they're 2-year terms. If you want to rerun, great, but you can do it with some knowledge and understanding of what really goes on. And if you don't want to run, even that's okay too. But it gives a great opportunity for those that might be really smart, really talented, but not an extrovert, doesn't want to go speak in front of crowds, is uncomfortable in that position, which truthfully I think is probably some of the more valuable assets in our communities.
Definitely.
I think it's a great opportunity for them. So spread the word, tell everybody about it, and hopefully we can get some great city council members to fill those seats. All right, the top story, water contingency plan and the Colorado River compact negotiation stalling. Okay, so a quick synopsis of the water contingency plan for everybody who doesn't know or didn't read the really thrilling report that they released, because nobody did that. Okay, it's a what-if manual for the water when the water demand outstrips supply, which we're right there. Mm-hmm. We're right there at the edge. We are using as much as we can anticipate we're going to get. Okay, it's raining for the next 4 days here in St. George. We need it. We had an extremely dry year this year. So we're right at the edge. So we've already outstripped it. This is a little bit late. Some of the commentary on Facebook was funny because it's like, well, it's funny to call it leading the way when we're not necessarily leading on this. It's kind of a secondary thought, but I'm not going to make any criticisms because it's a tough job. Okay, so it's a collaborative plan between the Water Conservancy District and the county's cities, the main cities. It's probably the big 5 cities. And it's a 5-stage system. So it's similar to the power, like reduce your use, like power gets color coded, right? There's 4 stages. Mm-hmm. And so it's a 5-stage system that manages the water shortages. They range from 0 being normal to 4 being a crisis. So 0 is one of the stages, which is funny. And then they set an increasing aggressive water reduction target from 10% in stage 1 to really drastic 60% reduction target in stage 4. Okay, so the plan's teeth, like the hard part of it, comes in when the policy's municipal scale water budget comes into play. When the shortage stage is declared, the Conservancy District will give each city a water budget based on its number of equivalent residential connections. This is something I have an issue with. Equivalent residential connections. Residential connections are different from commercial connections, different from industrial connections, different from agricultural connections, okay? So they're given in the budgets based on the number of residential connections. If the city exceeds the water budget, it faces an aggressive rate structure for extra water that they're paying, right? So it would cost, and that cost goes to the cities, but the cities are going to pass that water cost on to the residents, okay? So they're going to have a rate structure increase as if they don't meet those reduction plans, and when they get penalized, they're going to pass those likely. I don't see any reason why they would do it any different. They're going to pass that along to the residents paying the bills, okay? The plan is explicit. The first largest target is for cuts on discretionary water uses, with irrigated landscapes being the top priority. So and the key strategy is prohibiting the irrigation of ornamental lawns. Okay, so they're attacking ornamental lawns. Now this goes across the board. This isn't necessarily just residential, a residential target, but they are trying to target commercial water usage. My argument would be this is probably mainly focused on the public works or like public education. Like you think of schools, you think of churches. Most of those have quite large lawns. So I think that's they're going to really push on those to pull back the water usage from those lawns. So that's kind of the gist of it, right? They're going to put financial pressure on the cities and the residents to reduce water as we get in worse stages of water usage, right? So they're using money to drive the lower water usage. They also tout that we've reduced our water consumption by 50% since the early 2000s. So even though we've grown, we've reduced our water by 50%, which is impressive, but it's still not enough, right? They're focusing it on the residential. They're not necessarily gearing it towards commercial use, which I think the argument with golf courses, water parks, those things, I think those are valid concerns from the citizens, is like if and additionally, and I'll bring this up in a second, but I think there should be a focus on water usage being across the board. Now, it does stay in the statement that they're going to be across the board and they're going to be assessed across the board with commercial and residential, but their focus is basically on the equivalent residential connections. So the budget is based on the residential connections, not necessarily the water usage. So I'm not quite sure why they did that. We'd love to have Zach come in here and explain that portion of it. But for high water users that are in St. George specifically, because we have several golf courses in St. George, we got the golf course in Ivans. When the golf courses are using a ton of this water, the penalty is basically assessed based off of the residential connections, not necessarily on the water that's being used. And that, I'm not quite sure, makes a whole lot of sense to me. Do you think have you understood that differently?
Well, I mean, you got to think the heavy water users are data centers, golf courses, and like big industrial buildings, depending on what's going on.
And there's not too many of those, at least in Washington County,
not
but
too many,
the data center for sure.
The way that I understand it is that's kind of where the focus is, and it gives a little bit more authority to the newly created board on whether they approve a new golf course or a data center or whatever.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sense, at least right now. Maybe Zach can come in and explain it to us, why the usage is based on residential.
Yeah, why the budget is based off
why
of
the budget is based on residential,
and I guess
right?
I guess the only thing I could think of is it's the political pressure, right? Because you're trying to get a movement of people to collectively agree, right? And so if you're hitting the individual households, you're hitting a lot more than just a few individuals that are high water users. And if you put pressure on a lot of people, you're going to get movement in a larger scale. So maybe that's the case. But I'm sure the plan was thought out. There's probably pros and cons to each, but this is just my initial thought when it comes to the contingency plan. But this is tied to the Colorado River negotiations. So the connection is pretty simple, though. So if you go back to 2020, this is one of my first interviews that I did, and it was actually with the governor. I had the governor on, and I had 4 of the biggest developers in Washington County ask him questions. I didn't do any questions. It was just I wanted the developers to ask questions. Oddly enough, all 4 of the developers were asking about water. And at the time, Lieutenant Governor Cox, who's Governor-elect Cox, stated that the Lake Powell pipeline was the first, second, and third option for attaining water. At the time, the state of Utah hadn't taken the Lake Powell pipeline or the Colorado River Compact very seriously. These negotiations that are happening now, 5 years later, 6 years later, they weren't as necessarily on the radar as it is for the other 7 water compact Colorado River states, right? And he admitted on there that they hadn't prepped the legal team, so they doubled the size of the legal team right after Cox was elected. He said that was going to be his main focus, and less than 2 years later, the Lake Powell pipeline, and this was in the conversation I had with Zach Brenstrom, he said that's no longer a priority. It's like priority 7, right? So it went from the governor saying it was number 1 to now we don't talk about it, mainly because of these negotiations. These negotiations have stalled that ability for Southern Utah to gain water. So the entire contingency plan is designed to manage the county's only current water source, which is the Virgin River Basin. So basically Cedar Mountain. And the interesting thing about Cedar Mountain is that most of the water on Cedar Mountain comes this way. It doesn't go towards Cedar City and Iron County. It actually flows into Washington County. And the top of the Virgin River is Navajo Lake. So, and if you've been to Navajo Lake lately, it is very low, very low. So that being our current and our only water source, we don't get water from anywhere outside of our basin. So this pipeline was really supposed to be the future of the county's future growth, right? And so with the Colorado River negotiation stalling, they had until November 11th, as dictated by the U.S. Bureau of, let me find it here. Can't remember which bureau.
Reclamation?
Is that right? I lost my.
I'm trying to find the current percentage filled of Navajo Lake.
Hold on, everybody. I want to find it. This article, there's been only a few articles about the negotiation stalling, but this article from High Country News was a pretty good article, just kind of giving a synopsis of it. Yeah, Bureau of Reclamation. You nailed it. Way to go. Bureau of Reclamation has basically gave them till November 11th to decide. So the 7 states could not make a decision and agreement on the allotment of water that should go and be allocated from the Colorado River. That it means one of two things. Either the government, the U.S. government, so the Department of, or the Bureau of Reclamation is going to decide for the states, which is, I believe, unconstitutional to have, to force the states. But I guess, maybe let me back that up. It isn't, the point of the federal government is to manage these negotiations. So having the federal government jump in, I don't think that's not unconstitutional. I'm thinking out loud here, folks. Everybody hang with me. But the other scenario would be the government comes to a decision, says you're going to do this, or it's going to go to litigation. From the reports I've seen so far is it's probably going to go to litigation, and they're going to sue. All the states are going to sue each other over this. As of this week, so the 7 states, so it's Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, New Mexico, California, and Arizona, and Nevada, mainly center on the one thing. It all comes down to a few things. The lower basin states, Arizona, California, and Nevada, say the compact requires the upstream states to deliver a certain amount of water to them. The upper basin states, Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming, say that means their use is not supposed to cause water flows to fall below a certain level. So the lower basin states are saying, you have to give us a certain amount of water. The upper basin states are saying, well, we can't give you that water if we don't have it, right? And so now they're in this impasse of saying, well, we can't determine on how much that is, and nobody's budging, right?
And I think part of it stems from the fact that Utah has been using only about 50% of its allotted water since the Glen Canyon Dam.
Yeah,
was built.
yeah, that's true, and it's mainly because of where the water flows and how it flows. The majority of the development in Utah was along the Wasatch Front, and so they got their water sources not from the Colorado River, but from the Wasatch Front water basins. So it hasn't been until recently that southern Utah and other portions of the southern portion of the state, the southern and eastern portion of the state, have started to grow, that the usage on the Colorado River has been impacted. This is the crazy thing, though, and something that's not stated here. Southern Utah falls in the lower basin state area. So it's not just a state line. So it's based off the watersheds. So southern Utah falls into the lower basin state, and one of the main arguments why the Lake Powell pipeline was not approved before these negotiations started is because it was going to require that northern Utah transfer water rights from them to the lower basin area, which is southern Utah.
It's like a civil war.
It's like a civil war.
State civil war.
Yeah, Michael Burry talking about next war is going to be fought over water. So that's just the interesting wrinkle in this whole thing, is that southern Utah is part of the lower basin. So they're in the battle with the lower basin states, but the upper basin states are the ones that are disagreeing with the lower basin states, and it's mainly because of California. California in the early compact had a total water allotment. The other states, Arizona and Nevada, had a percentage of the flow. So because California had a total water allotment, they took all of that allotment and more on top of that. They were using everything and then privatized all of their other water across their state. So they bottle it up and sell it back to us at a premium and require that we allow them to continue to use the water. That's my opinion about this whole thing. So the long and the short of it is, if the Lake Powell pipeline is a key function of Washington County to continue to grow and use the water, and this stalling, unless this can get worked out, the Lake Powell pipeline is not. That's why the priority is all the way down at 7. So it's gonna cause us to need to use different sources of water, which I really do agree and believe that the Water Conservancy District is, and Utah in general, is investing enough and bringing in water that'll help us continue to grow and not put us in a really bad situation. But when your water bill starts to go up, you're going to know we really have problems. So something to watch out for. I believe this dovetails into the next conversation around housing and affordability, because if I'm a citizen of Washington County, if I live here and I see all this development happening, because I hear this all the time, why am I cutting my water so that new people can move in here? And why would I be paying higher rates because developers are building new houses and more people are coming in here that are using the water that I should have? I don't want any more development. I want to slow down the development. And this is going to trickle into the cities and put continued pressure from the citizens to the cities to slow development and to slow housing creation, which is going to impact the county's ability to have affordable housing within the county, right? So you have pressure on water is going to put pressure on cities to build less homes that'll increase the cost of affordability in southern Utah, which, according to all the polls over the last basically 4 years, housing affordability has been the number one issue for citizens. They want affordable housing, but they don't want it in their backyard, and they don't want to pay for it. So where do we go? Well, Trump has 2 really great solutions. So segueing into this, him and what's Pulte's first name? We just talked about Pulte.
Oh, Bill
Pulte? That's probably true. Bill Pulte. He's the director of the Federal Housing Authority. Okay, the FHA, Federal Housing Authority, Bill Pulte. They are tasked with trying to solve this affordability crisis. I've seen a lot of people talking about different solutions. The big news was the 50-year mortgage. So currently there's a few 40-year mortgage options out there, but the vast majority of mortgages are 30-year mortgages. So they say this is a big win. If we can go to a 50-year mortgage, this is going to allow people to get in. But then the social media and the economic experts started actually doing the math, because Trump didn't think we'd actually do the math. And it really only saves. And the funny thing is that you use all these different Interest rates, it changes the numbers. Somebody said, oh, it only changes somebody's payment by $150. Some of them only changes by $250. Essentially, your payment change between a 30-year and a 50-year fixed rate is about $300. Like on average, it's about a $300 payment change. But the equity that you're building over that period of time is so tiny. It's so tiny. And so you are essentially renting to own and paying the owner of the property significantly more, and you're not necessarily building the equity that you would in a 30-year range.
And who is the owner?
And the owner's the bank. The bank's the Fed. The banks that are creating the dollars that are driving down and devaluing the dollar are the ones that are taking all the households. You will own nothing and be happy. Isn't that what what's his name said?
You will own nothing and you will be happy.
And you will be happy. This got a lot of backlash across the country. I'm not necessarily against a 50-year option, but if the idea is that this is something that the Trump administration was like, hey, this is this great plan, and then he's pumping it up as this real solution, it's not a real solution in my mind. It is going to impact a fractional percentage of the buyers that are in the market. And for the most part, very few individuals, at least in Washington County, would I even, as a real estate agent, advise them that that's the best option for them. Mm-hmm. Because if you're looking for long-term wealth, you might as well just rent, save money, and then go buy a house when you can afford it at a 30-year rate, right? You just delay the time frame, which isn't great. I get that doesn't necessarily build wealth. It doesn't build community. It doesn't do all these things that it otherwise would. However, that 50-year mortgage option is really good for a small portion of people in a very limited situation. And I'm not sure that that's even what they're going to roll with, because just 2 days ago they started floating. Maybe that's not the one. It's like he's testing out these plans. Mm-hmm. It's almost like he's product testing. Yeah. He's like, oh, let's see what the reaction is with this idea, and what's the reaction with this idea, right? Mm-hmm. Don't you think that's true?
Yeah. And I'm not necessarily against it, right? I mean, we live in a free country. If it's an option, then people should be able to do research and figure out what might be best for their own situation. And maybe, at some level it is a good option, but I think it's not a very good idea for short-term affordability and higher interest rates.
Yeah, absolutely. So then he decides to give this option. It's portable mortgages. And this one sounds on the surface like it's great. Yeah. It allows current homeowners, to transfer their existing mortgage rate, whatever their rate is, their existing mortgage rate, to a new home upon selling, avoiding refinance costs and rate lock-ins, right? This could unlock, this is an assessment, this is one evaluation, it could unlock 10 to 15% more inventory by encouraging moves. That's not true. If I own a house and there's a house on the market and I sell my house and move to this other house on the market, there's still a house on the market. You're just trading supply. You're not increasing supply, because people aren't moving out of the house and then not moving into a house. It doesn't increase inventory, right, Jeff? Correct. It's not going to change inventory. Yep. Inventory is the existing homes that are there, and it might bring more inventory on the market at the time, but what it ends up doing is it gives buying power to a smaller segment of the buyers that can now outbid buyers that are entering into the market. I'm a first-time home buyer. I don't own a home. I'm at a 6% rate. I go and I want this, $400,000 house. Somebody who owns this $350,000 condo with $50,000 in equity and 4% rate can then look at that $400,000 house and outbid this entry-level buyer, because they can afford more. They have equity and they have the ability of having a lower payment. So they're like, ooh, I'll pick that house. And now you have two offers on it. The house sells for $425,000, and now home values go up, and the first-time home buyer is out of the market. They still didn't buy a house. Home values start to climb, and the buyer now gets a new house, and the increased cost, they increased $25,000, their smaller rate, doesn't impact them whatsoever. So there's a secondary consequence that this might shift some of it, but it's like you don't actually know what the fallout is. The additional fallout of this is mortgages are traded on secondary markets. If you have a qualified buyer at a certain rate goes and buys a house that keeps their rate the same, but then that house isn't, something happens to their credit score or something happens, they don't have to refinance, they don't have to requalify for it. What's the quality of that mortgage now? They bought a more expensive house. Is that mortgage the same tier mortgage as it was when it was first bought? So how is the secondary stock market going to assess those new purchases? How do they reassess the risk on when somebody moves from one house to another? Can you answer that question?
That's a great point, because if you think about, and maybe I'll present an example here. Someone that's got a $500,000 home at a crazy low interest rate, 2.5 or 3% interest, that they bought, I guess they would have bought in 2021, and they can go get an $800,000 home and just move that interest rate over to the $800,000 home. Their mortgage will go up a decent amount. But the risk from a lender would probably be lower, right? Because you have a way better home, a way nicer home. Yeah, your interest rate's still low, but the risk is a little bit lower.
But are they having to re-qualify for the $800,000 house?
I would think so.
You would think so. So now you got to write these new rules that go into it. Because what if they still have that lower rate, but what if the debt-to-income ratio is he's maxed out? He actually can't necessarily afford that as good as he could have before. And so now where he was completely comfortable in paying this other mortgage, now he's stretching it. The risk level from a mortgage lender goes up. Right? So when it gets repackaged and sold out in the market, this goes back to subprimes. It's like, I'm going to mix all these poor quality loans with these high quality loans and call it a AAA rating, when that wasn't necessarily the case, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to it, right? Because you could even upgrade a home. Like if you owe $300 on a home and you want to go, you find a really nice home for $500, and you can qualify for it and pay for it. Does the risk go down for the lender because now you have a way better home that's actually worth more?
Yeah, and this is where Pulte comes into play. So Pulte,
who by the way, he's 37. By the way, Bill Pulte definitely does not look 37. Wow,
comparison's a thief of joy. I am also 37, and I don't want to talk about what I'm doing. Bill Pulte, so he's the FHFA director, right? So he's tasked with the Federal Housing Authority, right? This seems to me a complete conflict of interest, because this portable loan, and this is what I said to you yesterday, is who does this benefit the most? New homeowner, like new construction. Because if I'm going to trade out one house to another, most likely they're going to want to upgrade. They can go buy a brand new home, and now the lender, the builder, doesn't have to subsidize the loan, which is what they're doing right now. D.R. Horton is doing it out in Long Valley, right? Resale values are being hurt because the builders are giving these insanely low rates because they own the lending industry. So they're spreading out their risk over time. They're selling the house for a price that they wouldn't otherwise be able to get with current interest rates, but they give this lower discounted rate, and now buyers can afford it, right? Instead of them subsidizing it, they're going to go to basically the Fed and say, this is going to subsidize it this way. Now I don't have to get those lower rates. We're going to just use the extra lower rates that are already out there to pay for this new inventory. That's what I think is that, in my mind. I'm like, what's going to benefit Bill Pulte the most? And cynical as it might be, and maybe he's like really trying to solve this, but I think there's a bunch of other ways that can solve the price of this issue, because is it affordability for everyone, or is it affordability for people trying to encourage home ownership? Is it first-time home buyers? Is that who they're trying to help? Are they trying to help people get into the market to own homes, or are they just trying to help people move? Right?
Yeah, because the American
get more
dream,
than what they can afford.
The American dream, and I think this is why people want to own a home, because the American dream is owning property, right? There aren't.
That's what they sold us.
That's what they sold us. That's what they sold us. So with that being said, they're not. I don't think they're trying to help people gain that quote American dream. They're trying to get more people into more new homes.
And this, I think these are both nothing burgers. I actually don't think either of these things are going to come into play. I could actually see the portable loans start going through the process and doing an evaluation on whether this is going to be good or not. But it's probably going to take at least 2 to 3 years to figure out what the rules are when it comes to this. Because if they just roll this out without any issues on the rules, this goes back to the mortgage-backed securities and mortgages being traded on the secondary market. There's a big ball of mess that you can't. There's second and third order consequences that you're going to have to write some rules around, and that's going to take a ton of time. It's not going to be something that can just magically help. But here are the main things that I think are definitely going to help expand. There's some value in credits for first-time home buyers, subsidy credits for first-time home buyers, in payments, right? So a subsidized rate like a USDA, Utah Housing has these. I think these are really helpful programs because they do guarantee a lower rate. They have less of a down payment obligation. It opens up the market for those first-time home buyers. I think that's something that they could expand.
And it's not being utilized either, by the way.
It wasn't. And they did it under Obama during the last housing market crisis. They expanded a couple of these incentive programs for first-time home buyers, but it expired in 2013 as the market started to rebound, and they could go back to that. So that's one thing that I haven't heard them talk about, which they could go back to. Yeah. The other thing is tiered rates. So tiered rates based on location. So I had talked to Brandon Ducharme about this. It's like, as a financial system goes, why is the entire country on these specific rates? Because we trade off of these secondary bond markets, right? But if you could recategorize some of these loans as based off of area and in income areas, right? The average or the area median income here is different than it is in Salt Lake. It's different in, Oklahoma. So if you had a tiered system of rates based off of, other economic indicators, that could rewrite rules. You have a bunch of different types of packages of mortgages that are out there instead of just one, right? You just or I guess there's not just one, but FHA, conventional loans, Fannie Mae.
Yeah.
So you have those. You can expand that to the different numbers based off of regional and population.
Yeah, right. Like why is an interest rate in the Bay Area the same as an interest rate in southern Missouri?
Which is basically just you're allowing banks to set their mortgage rates differently than what they're currently required to set them at, right? Is that there's some mechanisms in place that don't allow these banks to offer lower rates because they don't have the security. They don't have the security on it. So the federal government could come in and do that. Yeah. But the number one thing, and this can't be done by Trump. It has to be done at the state level. It has to be done at the local level. Is we have to increase supply. We have to build more homes. It's the only long-term effective strategy. All of these other things are short-term strategies that might not necessarily impact very many people for very long, but zoning reforms and an increase in supply will definitely encourage an increase in supply naturally, and redevelopment. This is the other key piece, is redevelopment, is that we have to allow older areas of town or older areas of single-family homes to upsize and increase their density without as many limits as what are currently on it. And I know St. George has done a good job in leading the way on some zoning reforms, but the rest of the cities in the county have really struggled on this. But I think it's something that we need to continue to encourage. But back to water, you're going to get increased pushback from citizens on building more housing and increasing zoning if the fear is water. So we're caught in a trap here, everybody. We're caught in a trap. And so if anybody's, especially if a politician's telling you, hey, we got the answer, it's not that simple. Anything else? You got any final thoughts on that one?
No, I think that might lead us into a conversation next time about Utah. They have some ideas, some proposals about at the state level taking over some local zoning laws, and there's a lot of people that are pretty frustrated about, especially in small towns where they don't want the state telling them what they can and can't do in their small town. So yeah, that could transition us to another.
Yeah, it definitely will. More to come when it comes to housing because it's a complicated issue. Last thing we're going to talk about is the congressional redistricting chaos up north. Judge Gibson, she was appointed by Governor Herbert back in 2018. Heard final arguments in a case where the legislature. Let me back up. Proposition 4 was passed, which was a ballot initiative in the state of Utah whereby the state would create a commission to draw congressional district maps, so gubernatorial maps, a third-party, nonpartisan commission to draw these maps. It was set to be approved by the legislature, and the legislature would adopt the map. Several organizations filed a lawsuit when Map C was drawn. Well, so the map that this third-party organization drew is called Map C, and it divided the state into 4 parts, and it split Salt Lake County into 4 pieces. By doing that, a lawsuit ensued where I'm sorry, guys. Let me take one more step back. After Proposition 4 was implemented, the legislature modified Proposition 4. A lawsuit was filed saying that the legislature cannot change a ballot initiative as approved on by the citizens of the state. It went to the Utah Supreme Court. The Supreme Court upheld the plaintiff's argument, saying that the legislature could not modify the language within Proposition 4. So the legislature, we pass a proposition, a ballot initiative. The legislature cannot modify that in whatsoever. The only way to change that proposition would be through another ballot initiative modifying Proposition 4. So when the legislature passed some rules on amending Prop 4, the Utah Supreme Court struck that down. They had to remove that rule. The commission comes to the table, says, here's Map C. We followed all the rules of Prop 4. The judge saw the case. They say, you didn't follow all the rules with Prop 4, with the main argument being, and there's a couple different arguments, but the main argument being is that the individual that drew the map used partisan data in drawing the map. It was on the screen with the software that he had. It was on the screen. Partisan data showed on the map showing where results had come in based off partisan data. He admitted to the judge that he did that. He said that the partisan data didn't change his map, but that it was there on his screen as he was doing it. And she said, you're not allowed to do that per Proposition 4. That's null and void. Sends it back to the legislature. They come up with another map. The lawsuit is ensued. The judge just throws out Map C and adopts a map written up by another organization, another party, the plaintiff in the case, and adopts that map as the new congressional map. Couple things here. A judge can't determine a gubernatorial in the map, a district map. Utah Constitution states that the legislature will draw the lines, not a judge, not another third party. So her ruling was taking the power of the legislature out of the equation and saying, we're not going to use the map you used. I'm going to pick my own map, and we're going with that one. As of right now, that ruling still stands. So until that ruling is challenged and appealed, which will likely go to the Utah Supreme Court, who knows when that will be seen, that ruling is going to be in effect. So as of right now, Salt Lake City or Salt Lake County has its own congressional district, which will likely go blue in the midterm election in 2026. So we got 1 year away. The likelihood of the Supreme Court ruling on this, Utah Supreme Court ruling on this particular case and overturning that is very unlikely. So the likelihood of Utah having a Democratic congressional member or a Democrat congressional member in 2026 is very high, which is causing chaos from across the state, from Republicans across the area. They filed I think there's been one presentation of rules of impeachment. So there's been one state house representative that have called for the judge's impeachment for violating the Utah Constitution in implementing this map outside of her legal authority.
Activism, they're calling it.
Political activism, yeah.
Activist judge.
It's an activist judge, which the interesting thing is that the judge, you would think that the judge would know she's not allowed to make that ruling because it violates the Utah Constitution, but I'm not quite sure she cares because it's going to just cause more chaos and more litigation. And in the meantime, Congress is likely to get one more Democrat on the seat. So that being the case, the saga is going to continue. I think as of right now, the political fallout of this is going to be a focused attention on impeaching her. You're going to see more and more about that. But in changing the rules and changing the map, that's a whole nother route that I think the Republican Party is going to have to strategize around and how they're going to move forward with trying to adjust this and go. They're going to have to go and appeal back to the state of Utah. I mean, if the
and Cox backs that, by the way, too. He's publicly said that he's backing an appeal.
Yeah, well, I mean,
which,
he kind of has to.
Of course,
he kind of has to.
Right.
But anybody, I mean, this is the difference between partisanship and what's right and wrong, right? Was the map that was adopted by the legislature, did they do something wrong? I think it's obvious that there's a case to be said from the judge to say, you can't prove to me that this was not partisan in drawing this map. You can't prove to me when the guy who drew the map says that there was partisan data on the screen while he was doing it. Like, that shouldn't have been that shouldn't have been a factor in doing it based off of Proposition 4. Mm-hmm. The other thing, though, is that when it comes to challenging ballot initiatives, this is a problem that California has had and continued to have for the last probably 40 years. Ballot initiatives go up to the state. The state cannot change them. And it's the super, the high-speed rail line from San Francisco to L.A., right? That was approved by ballot initiative. And decades go by and billions of dollars are spent and there's no rail there, right? So the citizens are like, yeah, this is a great idea, but the legislature can't do anything about it, and they have to approve funds to fund this thing that isn't necessarily the smart decision. And so we have this battle of what's the proper role? Are we a representative democracy or are we a direct democracy? And when you're a direct democracy, you have to assume that the mob and the general population will make decisions that hurt themselves in the long run and don't understand all the consequences of it. Mm-hmm. And Utah's going to have to wrestle with that because with that Supreme Court ruling allowing the legislature or keeping the legislature from amending ballot initiatives, that could cause, and you're going to see more ballot initiatives. With that ruling, I think you're going to see ballot initiatives probably every single election moving forward because that's how it was in California. I mean, there was 3 and 4 almost every single time.
Yeah. But also, correct me if I'm wrong, the lieutenant governor, Deidre Henderson, did not have to implement the map.
I don't know that part. That's interesting.
That's a great question. I don't think I know the answer to it. I don't think she had to implement the map, but she implemented it, and it's.
Oh, that's to be continued. If you know in the map, if you got in the comments, if you have thoughts in the comments, please let us know what your thoughts are on this. Yep. Listen, I get that there's a lot of partisanship when it comes to this thing, and it is this is a party issue, and from the federal government all the way down to the local business, local community, right? The local politics, it is partisanship. We have made a huge error in our calculus that your party is where the power is. The focus should be what is right and what is wrong. It doesn't have to do with the party. It's what's right and what's wrong. What's the best solution moving forward? And that's the window that most people should be looking through, but they don't. We get so sucked in and we allow, Trump, Epstein files, like this is the whole thing. He's made it a partisan thing. He's like, this is the Democrats trying to take you away from all these other things. It's a hoax, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not an individual person or a group of people. It's the Democrat. It's them doing it, or it's the Republicans doing it. Mm-hmm. That's not the case. These are individual humans that have individual interests that they're following and that they are motivated by. It's not party, it's power. And so we got to fight the urge to just group ourselves into these two little tribes. We got to fight the urge to do that, see what's right and what's wrong. We're going to hope, I hope we can continue to do that and have thoughtful decisions as we move forward. But that's all I got for today, guys. What do you got, Jeff? Anything else? What are you doing this weekend?
We could keep going. Let's see. Utah football games at 5 o'clock Saturday night. Hopefully watch that. And nothing else too crazy on the schedule.
You can play in the rain.
Yeah, it's going to be raining all weekend.
Chili cook-offs. I know there's chili cook-offs in town.
It's that weather. Yeah.
It's that weather. Yeah,
October, November. There's tons of things to do in the county. Hope you guys are having fun out there. Shoot us in the comments. What are you doing this weekend? What are you doing this week? What is there to do in Southern Utah? We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Hanging with us as we're trying this new format. We really appreciate it. We'll see you out there, guys.